is fermentation? What are we talking about here? It's really interesting that this talk on fermented foods followed the talk about death. Because fermentation, essentially, it's the action of microorganisms on a substance. And in this case, we're talking about food. But fermentation is that liminal, in-between place between life and death. It's a form of controlled decomposition. So it's not just simply, fresh food that's been picked out of the garden, but nor is it food that is rotting. We use microorganisms to manipulate the food, to move it, to break it down in a way that it will become beneficial to us. And, the whole buzz about fermented foods is kind of this new thing, like research shows, fermented foods do all these great things. But the truth is that cultures, indigenous cultures all over the globe throughout history have been fermenting foods. And there's a saying in the fermented foods world that culture is culture. Food culture, the rituals around our food are the core of our cultural heritage. And in this modern industrial culture, all those cultures are being wiped out by the industrial food system, but so are those beneficial bacteria that keep us alive. So do any of you, I'll just tell you, I'm of Sicilian background. My grandparents came over from Sicily, from Ellis Island. And my grandfather was a winemaker, and wine is a fermented food. But my grandmother used to do a lot of crazy things. Among them was she used to ferment pig's feet. And I still remember as a little girl sitting in her kitchen, with her dentures clicking on the pig's feet. So did any of you have parents, grandparents, great-grandparents that used to pickle fish or put up sauerkraut or ferment vegetables? Yeah.
So I come from Croatia.
Yeah.
And
You're from Croatia?
Right, yes. And when I was in high school in the States, my grandmother was living with us, and she always literally had these big buckets of cabbage with the plate holding it down with vinegar and water in there, and the whole garage smelled like sauerkraut. And all my friends were like, what is going on in your garage? What's in those buckets? Because it was so strong. But we had to have these sour cabbage rolls every Sunday, and she didn't trust Americans to make it the right way, so we had buckets of sour cabbage.
And how was that for you to eat that?
I love it.
All right. And you're healthy, yeah. Thank you, Grandma. What is this? So fermentation is the action of microorganisms on food. So let's talk about why this is important. Because why it's important is we are only 10% human. Can you take that in for just a minute? We're only 10% human. The cells in our body, I think it's 10 to the 13th, something like that. But only about 10% of the cells in our body are, Marcella cells. The other 90% are bacteria and microorganisms that we have co-evolved with for millennia, and we have what's called a symbiotic relationship with them. So we host them. We give them a place to live. And in turn, they benefit our immune system. They strengthen our digestion. They help us assimilate nutrients from our food. I really like to think of them as our angels. And we have this image of angels, right? But for me now, angels are these little squiggly things under a microscope with lots of little hairs on them, because they are our protectors, they are our guardians, they are our angels. And without them, we do not live. And in our culture, I don't know if you've noticed, I loved the two Canadian women. Thank you, Canada. We love Canada. We seem to be addicted to war. We're at war with everything. It's like a fashion. What are we at war with now? And a while ago, we had the war on germs. But by waging war on germs, we are killing ourselves because they are 90% of who we are. And actually, a couple years ago, the Centers for Disease Control came out against hand sanitizers and said, stop overly sanitizing everything because we're making the pathogenic bacteria more resistant and we're killing the beneficial. So we need them to live. So what do fermented foods do? Fermented foods preserve food in the absence of refrigeration. So all these cultures that maybe don't have modern conveniences like refrigeration, it's a way of preserving food. Fermented foods make nutrients more bioavailable. So soybeans, for example, are really difficult to digest until you break them down via fermentation. And then they have all those wonderful things that the food industry likes to talk about, like, what are they? Phytoestrogens, you know, yay, pro-menopause. But you need fermentation to access that. Fermentation enhances the therapeutic properties of food. So miso, has anybody not heard of miso? Okay, great. Miso is a fermented soybean paste. It contains a substance called dipicolinic acid, which breaks down heavy metals and escorts them out of the body. So people who went through the Hiroshima bombings in World War II, those who had the traditional Japanese diet suffered less radiation sickness because of eating things like miso. And then the last thing is that fermented food is yummy. And it stinks. And you'll see that when we go into the other, we'll go into the kitchen in just a moment. Yeah, it's like very, you know, fermented foods are like you either love them or hate them. And you're going to taste some sauerkraut and a couple other things. And if you don't like it and you think it's totally nasty, don't worry about it. I'm not offended. You can, you know, have your opinion about it.